Alright, here's an assignment where you animate both the ball and the pendulum and sort of put it all together to make one particular animation. And the animation is going to be the ball and tail bouncing across the screen. Now, several ways you can go about this. Uh, Breaking it down, making it simple, is think about this is just the ball. You're going to have it bounce across the screen, and then you have the tail to sort of react to that. Uh, so there's several ways we can do this. I want to do it the way that I think is best fit for all. If you select the very bottom controller, you can actually change what this ball looks like. You can change it to a fox or a beaver. We'll go ahead and put it to a fox. So there's your fox, has a face. This will just allow you to help you to see where the face is at, to see where your character is facing in case you know he comes down, you don't put him on his face when he's jumping. So with this, there's several ways you can do. You can turn off the tail so you don't see the tail, and you can focus on the ball first. Um, and when animating something that is alive, it's going to slightly go a little bit different than when animating something that's just reacting. But 90% of the principle is still the same thing. So I want to animate it as if this is just a ball and it's just going to bounce across the screen. So first things first, I want to put my character basically back. Now you can do it one or two ways. The one previous tutorial I had the ball bounce. I did the bouncing first and then I added the translation. That way I focused on my up and down, and then I focused on moving it forward, which allowed me to put more, just allowed me to break things down without getting overcomplicated. And I think I'll go with that route first. So I'm at 100 frames. I want to go at about 80 frames. Not that big of a difference, but 80 frames. And for now, I'm just going to focus just like I did the other one, focus on my up and down. But I'm going to go frame 20, give 20 more frames, about frame 40. Frame 60, have it end about frame 80. And on frame 10, it's going to throw it up about 6, almost 7 units high. It's sort of high, but I'll be it. And I'm going to middle mouse and keyframe on 30, 50, and 70. So he's going to basically jump this high the whole time as he's going. Sort of want to go into my graph editor already and just get the up and the Y, the up and down. I'm going to get that down right now. So I'm going to jump to my graph editor, press F, go to my Y, go ahead and change my tangents to be weighted tangents. Oops. Let's go ahead and knock them off. All is free. These bottom ones, obviously, I want them to be broken. And this may change. I may alter it later on, depending on how I want to do my squash and stretch, how much of it. Sometimes I see myself doing things as backwards. I probably should do this first and then adjusted these. And I'm doing everything all sort of in a like textbook manner. So one thing I would normally do is as I'm doing this is sort of check my screen, see what my animations are looking like. I've done this so many times that I just sort of figured I know what it's sort of going to feel like. So this is my dude. He's jumping up and down. He's all excited. He gets to jump. He's like, yay. So next thing, once I got this part down, I might add a little bit of squash, or yeah, squash and a little bit of stretch. But one thing I want to do, I'm gonna grab this controller, and I want to make sure I set the same key on frame 20. I believe I had it at 40, 60, then 80. Then I have one at 10, 30, 50. I think it was 70. But so once I got that, I want to have him. So I want to add a little bit of stretch. Like he's stretching up the jump. He's stretching. My stretch has to happen a little soon, almost on the very first frame, because he's just sort of jumping. He's catching up. I'm not gonna have the stretch as he comes down. Well, maybe I will a little bit. I definitely want to have the stretch as he goes up. I sort of just want to avoid the boink and the bounce here. but I want him to feel like he's jumping. You know what I mean? So he's jumping. His body's catching up with them. So I may have to hold him down just a little bit more here, so I can get that squashing and then that leap as if he's pushing himself off. He sort of comes up and he goes down. Yeah, I think that's something I was do right now. Let's go to my curve editor. I want to grab these curves, these right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add basically a key so it's flat through these two, from like frame 19 to 21. I'm going to add it so it's flat. So when he comes down, he'll come down, he'll squish, and then he'll propel himself forward. And then when you move him forward, when you translate and start translating forward, you start seeing where that comes into effect. From frame here to here, I'm just going to go ahead and press S. That's my key. Grab this one, move it down, grab this one, down, sort of flatten these guys out. Adjust these accordingly. Do the same thing with these two. So now it feels like my guy, he hits, he squishes, and then he jumps and he bounces. He's gonna do the same thing here. Instead of bounce right away, he's gonna react just a little bit. Let's get him. Let's go all squared away. So we'll just delete this one. Move you over. The funny thing is, as you guys animate and as you understand how these principles and everything else work, you'll find different ways, maybe faster, more efficient ways to sort of animate your characters, which and it'll probably help you be more comfortable animating with some of these things. But this is just how I do it. Let's break this. All right, so that's that. Oops. So now my dude, he stops and he feels like he's the one jumping. Like my little guy's like, hey, I'm happy, I'm jumping. So when he hits the ground, I'm not gonna wait for him so long to squash. He's gonna get this key out. So he hits, comes down. I'm gonna have him squash a little bit long. Then he jumps, and the key thing is too for the bounce, to make it feel like he's the one that's jumping, is have this key pop up before he actually leaves the ground, and then it'll give that feel that he's sort of pushing himself off instead of sort of reacting, like hitting the ground and reacting. And what I did there is I just stretched it out here. Now I looked for the point where the key right before he bounces up, and I stretched it out there. Then in the middle, I'm just going to squish him down a bit. And that may, depending on, yeah, I could get rid of this key if I wanted to, but I think it's all right. So now my little dude feels like he's the one in control. He's the one that's, bouncing himself up. Now comes the other part, which is sort of the fun part because it's more of the reactive part, is the tail. All right, so I want to grab my my main controller here, put my tail back on. There's my tail. Make sure I save as I go. So now what I want to do is I want to make my tail. I'm just gonna grab just the 4 back controllers. This is it right here. This is the only ones I want to use. I'll make sure I set a key on all of them at frame 0, and a key on frame 80. Now, previously we knew that at frame 20, around frame 40, around frame 60, and of course 80. And then you went half between each of those, frame 10, 30, 50, and 70. So that's sort of the same keyframe sets that we have with the main body part. So we're going to keep that, and what we're going to do now, one thing we're going to do is we're going to set the pose for our tail at the beginning. to sort of have more of a fun type of feel. It feels more, say, like a raccoon-ish or fox, a little bit more. So now it has a little curve. So when he starts to jump, obviously when he pushes up, all this should be facing down. So I can either grab all the controllers and sort of just face it down. And if you look from frame 0 to here, it sort of leaves us like linear line to go down. We obviously want to keep our principles in there the same. So when he starts to go up, the very beginning of the tail will already be down. This portion of the tail will somewhat be down. And since it is it's already off the ground, these back part, these last two controllers of the tail would sort of be pointed, but a little bit almost last, because you can sort of see it almost as like a sort of a wave right here. Now that is, I'm going to try to draw that pose by pose. So we got this nice little almost a S type of curve at the very beginning of the animation. And we can still even delay it just a little bit more, that back part, or the back portion of the tail. But in theory, you want this tail to sort of almost wipe off the ground. But for the very first frame, we're just gonna, or very first portion of this, we're just gonna have it sort of swish like this. So you want to set that very first frame of your tail almost in this like snake type pose. Then almost close to your second or third frame, you want to sort of start putting it down to a little bit of almost a C, backward C. And then almost the third frame having it all the way pointed down. And then let frame 10 be what frame 10 is that we had set it already. And you'll sort of start seeing this sort of wave that starts to happen. So on the way down, obviously we know what happens. The tail should be facing up because it's dragging everything behind it. So right before frame 20, where it's already landed, we want to go to about frame 18, select all the tail controllers, and rotate it up so it's pointed up. Not too far, but we want to make sure the tail point here is still pointing like in the direction it's coming from. So it's going to go like this. So now you got this sort of curve, and now it's going. And see what happens here, how it's sort of straight, and it gets to this. Well, obviously we don't want this straight. This is the part where you want half the tail touching the ground and the other half sort of almost touching it, where it's almost like a C. So I'm going to grab all the controllers again, drag it down to where these two are pointed this way, but I want these two to be almost completely this way. But also, this is where we need to have our ground plane that we need to set up earlier. Should have set up earlier. I want to make sure that this is somewhat. I'll go to my side view. Oops, wrong views. If I were to go to my side view, and this right here, this line was the ground. I would want this portion of it to barely be touching right there. Now I want to sort of get this kind of a feel for it. Something like that. So it's going to come down. Then when it starts to hit, it's going to hit this way. But as he jumps up, these two controllers are going to point almost straight at the ground. You want to make sure you get this line right in here, sort of create that line right almost exactly where it sort of jumped off from. It can't, hit here, then it sort of almost smacks the ground to sort of jump back up. And then obviously at frame 30, I'm going to sort of copy what we had at frame 10 as far as the tail goes. So now you sort of got this tail that's flopping, and you can tell that, that's terrible. Anyways, you can tell that once you get to your frames you haven't done, you see how much difference that tail makes. So now I want to sort of do the same thing with the rest of these keys, as he jumps up and his tail comes to here. And here's a little trick too. You know what? Every time he's at its peak, his tail's going to be at this position. So you can go ahead. In animation, you cheat in all sorts of ways. You find shortcuts, as you could say. At frame 30, 50, and 70, it's going to have that same pose. So I'm not going to waste time. I'm just going to go ahead, middle mouse, save, or press S to set a key there, middle mouse, set a key there. Then at frame 60, or at frame 20, that's when this character hits the ground. Frame 40, it's almost the same. Frame 20, just about the same. So I might just say, you know what, I want to copy these keys, or these controllers at frame 20, and sort of paste them at frame 40 and 60, or 60 and 80. So now you sort of get this same thing, but then you got to go back and say, all right, I know that frame, like basically 2 frames before I hit the bottom, or before my character hits the bottom, it has this kind of pose. Same thing. I'm just gonna go back. Oops, not that one. It has this kind of pose. So I want to select these, middle mouse into about 2 frames. 38 for that one. Let's see, 58 for this one. About 78 for that one. So now, oh, I didn't have, must not have had. Gotta make sure. Set key, middle mouse. Set key, middle mouse. Set key, middle mouse. Set key. Oh, I completely forgot. There's a key. There's a controller right there. I was forgetting. Make sure you grab all the keys first, or the controllers first, and then go in and make your adjustments. If I'm not mistaken, and you may have to go back because my squash is a little squashier here than it was on this one. But also, if you notice, I can select these things, right? All my keys for 22, or frame 22, I need to make those now. So 2 frames after 40, after my contact pose hitting the ground, 2 frames after, my tail's bent straight down. So I'm going to go 2 frames after each contact before I hit the ground and do that, except for the last one because it's. So now I have my tail reacting and it's jumping up and down. So it's all excited. The ball's all excited. There's just one thing left for us to do, is to make this guy move forward. And that's the same thing that you could do. That's the same thing you would do on this, or with the ball when we had to move forward. You can do the same thing with this, and it'll make it look like the ball. It's just, the guys just move forward. The thing about this one though, is one thing that we did out of this was we made it a loop. So basically, frame 0 and frame 80 are almost identical. The difference is this is basically hitting the frame right before this one, or actually it's hitting right in 78. Like these 2 frames are almost the same, and you can practically make them the same so it could loop if you would like. So I'm going to go in, grab this controller, go to my graph editor, or before I go to my graph editor, I want this guy to bounce almost all the way over here. So at frame 80, I'm just going to drag him all the way over here. Okay, so since I dragged them from here, oops, all the way to here, now I got to do is find my Z translation, delete all the keys in between that. My character will bounce all the way through. Now there's several things that I'll need to do because there's certain portions of the animation where I have it basically hits here and it stays, so it basically slides. Like if you look on here from frame 58 to 61, it slides, and that's because it's still moving. On here I didn't want it to move, I wanted to sort of stop and jump. There's a way to do that, is to fix that. One thing I want to do with this control to begin with is I want to make it a constant speed. So I want to click this icon, and now it's just going constant. So one thing I want to do is at frame 19, I want to set a key. So now there's a key here. At frame 22, oops, frame 22, set a key as well. And probably do the same thing, frame 38, frame 40. This is when the the character is touching the ground. I'm setting the key right there when it touches the ground. It's still on the ground, and I'm setting the key, and then no more keys. So what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to basically make them the same distance, so that when this hits here, I want to have it stop right there, so it travels, so it doesn't travel. So it looks like this will stop, or that key will stop. So let me just show you. I want to select the key. Notice the value of that key is 5. I'm going to copy that value. Then I want to stick it on this key, and you get this kind of thing. Then all you want to do is grab that key, set that one like so, grab the key and hit the linear button so it goes linear. So now it's going to go, stop, go, and then once it hit here, it's going to stop. I'm going to copy this value, copy, and then paste it onto this one, and basically do the same thing again. So now the first 2 bounces, you'll notice that it's going to sort of stop, and he's going to bounce. It looks like he's pushing himself forward. The other 2, he sort of keeps on going and he keeps sliding. Or the other one. So I want to just change this, do this last one. And now my guy is bouncing across the screen. There's a few more things. One more thing that I'll touch up on, and that's the rotation. Now, the rotation is a little bit different. If there's one thing I would like to change on this rig, is to actually have this sort of translate back and forth like we had on the previous ball rig, but it's one thing we can't do. But one thing I want to do is when my character jumps and he reaches my peak, which is at his height, I want to leave that part of the rotation there. I don't want to change it. But what I do want to change is somewhat the start. I want to rotate him a little bit forward. And as he comes down, I just want to rotate him a little bit this way, so it feels like he's sort of jumping up and across. So as he's jumping across, he'll lean forward, and then as he's coming down, he'll sort of lean back. When he hits the ground, he sort of leans forward. As he's coming down, he'll sort of lean back. As he jumps up, he'll lean forward. And it just adds more to the believability of the character. So now the character looks like he has a little bit more life. Now, one thing you may find out, you may have to go back and adjust your movement that we had before, because now that he rotates, he slides a little bit. You can tell. Get a closer look. So at the very beginning, his bottom point's right here. And at the very end, when I have him slide, his bottom point's back there. Those things you got to be careful about. And sometimes just to fix that, like sometimes before you go and do the previous thing that I've done with the main portion of it, before I make these kind of adjustments, you can probably throw the rotation in, and the rotation will sort of fix some of that, where it feels like he's like bouncing and moving forward and jumping instead of. Let me just show you. So now those points where he's bouncing, the rotation looks like it fixes it. So now it's like he just rotates to that position that he translated to. So now it doesn't look like he slides.